It's Ash from Super Videos back for another video. This is going to be my review and discussion for 714, which was called The Other Side. So this episode was one of those episodes where it was basically broken into two halves. The first half was very slow, nothing really happened. And then the second half, a lot of things went down and it was very intense and very entertaining to watch. Now, I'm not gonna say the episode was bad because it wasn't bad. There was a lot of moments in this episode that I really loved, but there was also parts in the episode where I just found myself thinking about other things or looking at my phone or things like that, which means that it was a bit slower. And some of those moments were not really character development. I like character development, and some of the development they do in conversation, it's very gripping and you can just listen and you're entertained. But some parts of this episode didn't have that. I'm gonna go through all of the main pieces in this episode. So we started with getting to see Maggie and Sasha getting the Hilltoppers ready to fight and basically teaching them how to throw knives and fight. That was a very cool montage. I really loved the way it was structured and also the score. Everything was cool about it. It was a bit slow, but for a opening scene and a bit after the opening scene even, it was okay. I was okay with it. And it actually helped us get to know and start liking Enid a little bit as well, which was very cool. Then we have Jesus and Enid finding out about Sasha and Rosita's plan. And I really love Jesus in this moment because in this specific moment when he finds out, he's not afraid to tell Sasha that he's gonna help him. He doesn't care if he hasn't really known Sasha and Rosita for that long. He feels like they're his family, which is very cool. And I just think that the storyline around the Hilltop community right now, specifically Sasha and Maggie with Enid with Jesus, it's very cool. And I'm very interested to see long term how that turns out. And it's going to be very cool to see what happens there. Of course, by now we kind of know that Sasha's not going to be living for longer. I don't think she's going to come back to Hilltop ever again. I don't think she's going to survive anymore. She's not going to come back. But specifically Maggie and Jesus, that's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the long term. Of course, in the comics, those two characters have something very unique. It's not anything romantic. It's not anything weird. It's just two very close friends who have come to respect one another and understand where each other are coming from. And they would die for one another in a way. So that's going to be very interesting to see. But then, of course, we have the Saviors coming to the Hilltop. Now, what I didn't like about this specific arc with the Saviors coming to the Hilltop is the way it was portrayed. So the writers and the producers, the director specifically, wanted us to believe that the Saviors were coming for Daryl and Maggie, which we knew wasn't the case. I even speculated that they were going to go for the Doctor. There was a part of me that thought maybe they could be going for Daryl, but I pretty much knew that they were probably going for the Doctor. So that whole setup and that whole trying to make us believe that they're going for Daryl was unnecessary, and it just didn't add anything to the episode. If anything, it stretched out scenes that didn't need to be as long as they were. But it was cool to see Simon and Gregory. Those two actors, Stephen Ogg and Xander Berkeley, did an amazing job. I loved the dynamic between the two and their conversation. I really think that those two actors, they elevated the scenes they were in. And it was very entertaining to watch them together. But of course, they come and take the Doctor. Then we have the part with Sasha and Rosita on their way to the sanctuary. Really nothing there. They were just going there and finding a way to get close enough. Of course, along the way, there was a lot of tension between the two, mainly because Rosita and Sasha both like the same guy, and they have this ego, both of them, that makes it so that there's tension between them all the time. But I really enjoyed how they turned around Rosita a little bit, because even in this episode, she started being very cocky and acting like she can do everything, that she doesn't care about anyone. and she just wants to kill Negan. That's all she wanted to do. She didn't care about who's gonna die, who's gonna get killed, who's gonna suffer along the way. But by the end of that episode, when she was left out of the gates and Sasha sacrificed herself, we saw Rosita break down a little bit. So we saw the true Rosita once more, and it kind of made her more human. And I really loved how they turned that around, so it was very cool to see. Then, going back to the hilltop itself, we have the moment where Maggie and Daryl are almost caught. Now that's another scene that was unnecessary. So it was like forced in a way, because we knew that the Saviors were not gonna capture Daryl and Maggie. We just knew that. Not because those two characters are unkillable, but rather that, for one, Maggie has a bigger story coming up, and they've already been building that up. They did a lot of that in this episode, and we knew that they weren't going to get Maggie. And for Daryl, of course, if the Saviors found Daryl this time, they were going to kill him. And it's very unlikely that you're going to kill Daryl 2 episodes before the finale. Because, of course, Daryl is a big character. So if you're going to kill Daryl, then you're going to do it in a premiere, in a finale, mid-season premiere, or mid-season finale. So because of that, I kind of knew that Daryl was safe as well. And additionally, there's more of Daryl's storyline coming up, in my opinion, which is why I don't think he's going to die just yet. But that whole thing with Enid dropping the vegetables and the director making us feel like Daryl and Maggie are going to be captured was unnecessary again, and it felt a bit forced, which kind of took me out of that whole situation a little bit. But overall, I really like the setup, but not the execution. Going back to Simon a little bit, we have this conversation between Simon and Gregory is basically asking for Simon's help, and Simon says, I'll help you, and he basically gives Gregory the directions to how to find him, so that if anyone tries to take over Hilltop, then Simon would help him take care of the situation. Now, it felt a bit out of character for Simon to just give away the directions to the sanctuary, unless he gave a direction to an outpost and then they would take him to the sanctuary from there or something along those lines. But I just felt like it was a bit out of character for Simon to do something like that. But I really liked that conversation. Again, those two characters killed it this episode, so I really liked that. And then going to the highlight of this episode for me was Daryl and Maggie's conversation about Glenn. Daryl apologizing, saying I'm sorry, and crying, and it was very emotional. I felt like to see Daryl break down like that in front of Maggie, it was very emotional to see, and I really liked that. Now, in my opinion, they could have built up on that a little bit. It felt like it was over pretty soon, so I really wanted to see a more in-depth conversation between those two characters, because of course that's what we've been waiting for ever since Daryl escaped. So I felt like they needed to spend a bit more time on that. They rushed it a little bit, but I really loved that specific scene between them. And then of course we have the assassination attempt and Sasha basically not being able to take the shot because Eugene and Dr. Carson were in the way. Again, that specific scene took me out of the episode because I could see a bunch of possibilities for Sasha to shoot Negan. There was a lot of times where it was a clean shot. You could definitely take the shot, but Sasha didn't. So because of that, it felt forced. It felt like they were making it so that Sasha wasn't really able to kill Negan, but in reality what we saw was that Sasha had plenty of opportunities to do it, but she just didn't do it. Not because she didn't want to, but because the writing was not proper in a way. Because there was definitely scenes or shots within that scene where I was like, if she takes the shot, that's gonna hit him. But, like I said, I understand that it's difficult to shoot a scene like this, but it would have been better to make it more realistic and more believable. We have the part where Eugene doesn't want to go with them, so Rosita and Sasha try to help Eugene escape, but Eugene doesn't take the opportunity. Now, I'm beginning to feel like they're trying to make us hate Eugene again, for whatever reason. but it seems like they're just going out of their way to make Eugene do things that would make us hate him. Not that it's unrealistic or it's out of character. It's definitely in character for Eugene to do something like that. But I would think that in that situation, he wouldn't say no. I think he would definitely go with them. Maybe he would change his mind afterwards, but I just don't see him saying no straight away. I understand that he's treated like a king at the sanctuary and everything, but Rosita has spent a lot of time with Eugene. And for Eugene to just throw that out the window, he's a piece of shit, like Rosita said. So I hope that they don't make us hate Eugene so much that he's irredeemable. I hope that he comes around sooner or later and that there's still that opportunity for them to redeem his character. Because the way it seems, everyone's hating Eugene. So I definitely hope they do something with Eugene that is both in character for him, but also good for the story long term. So then we get to the meat of the story, or the end of the story, where Sasha sacrifices herself to basically go and kill Negan, and she tells Rosita, it's not your time. That was very emotional. I really loved that. And I feel like Rosita would blame herself. Of course, she's already blaming herself for Olivia's death, but this being added to her conscience just makes Rosita an unstoppable force for the war, which I'm very excited to see. And of course, we did see Rosita turn it around. So she was acting like a bitch, but she turned it around. And she slowly made us understand where she's coming from and give her the benefit of the doubt a little bit. So that's why I think coming up, the war that's going to be coming up, not only are fans going to like Rosita a bit more than they used to, but also she's going to be an unstoppable force, which is going to be very cool to see. But then we have Rosita running away and she sees either Daryl or Dwight. We're not really sure who she saw, but in my opinion, it was Dwight. Now I'm going to do a separate video on that, giving my full thoughts about why I think it's Dwight, but just for the sake of this review, I'm not going to go into more detail, but I'm just going to say that I think it's Dwight. But overall, I really liked this episode. Like I said, it wasn't great, it wasn't bad. It was one of those episodes where it was broken in half. Half of it was good, half of it was slow. So I would give this episode a mid-good rating. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll be back for another video.